Recently on the Relax Running podcast, I was lucky enough to catch up with ultra endurance superstar and co-author of the book Going Long, Mr. Gordo Byrn. Now, if you don't know Gordo Byrn, he was the winner of Ultraman 2002, but took a heap of time away from competitive sports to focus on family and children. But recently, in his mid-50s, he's returned to the sport with big goals going into his late 50s and into his 60s and beyond. What I love about Gordo throughout this conversation is obviously he talks about all the general things which are good for athletes of all levels, but then he drills down into some real specifics for athletes over the age of 50s, curating practical, clear information on what advice is relevant to you and why. Now, like all things Gordo Byrn, he's got a beautiful way of breaking down the information. The first point he touches on is what he calls break point volume. Check this out.
As soon as the overuse injury or the niggle turns up, the overall approach we have needs to change, full stop. So we can, if all you're doing is doing all these recovery modalities to try and get you back to a plan that's breaking you in the first place, you're going to be in a cycle of not progressing as an athlete. And it's going to ultimately take your enjoyment away. And you're at the start of a downward spiral, whether you realize it or not. So something's going to need to change. So you need to reset your expectation. Now, this is something I've gone through as an older athlete. It's something we're all going to go through. So we're going to have what worked for us when we were developing, when we were younger, when we were at our peak. And at some point, that'll stop working. And we're going to have to figure out another way to manage it. And one of the things I've learned from my mentors who race successfully all the way up into their 70s is that at some point, it's going to become staying in the game more than the training itself. So it's going to be the ability to train is going to be what generates performance in these very experienced athletes, not so much the training protocol itself. And this will be a mindset change. And if you don't change, your body's going to break. It's not going to be much fun. You're going to drop out of the sport. So this concept of breakpoint volume is a really good one for the listeners to think about. Particularly if they're chronically injured. Well, don't get trapped in getting yourself back to what hurt you in the first place.
Now, the conversation moves into race weight and the appropriate race weight for what it is that you're training for. Now, one of the common misconceptions Gordo believes is that weight should be low because that means that we move more quickly throughout the race that we're a part of. But this misses some context. And in fact, maybe having a little bit of weight could be valuable for a variety of reasons. I love what he says here about that heavier versus lighter conversation around elite endurance performance.
This is a good one for runners too. If when you back off the stress, you have huge rebound eating and your weight is not stable, that's a sign that you're making yourself too light in the season. And, triathletes are prone to this as well, particularly our elite triathletes. And this isn't a male or female issue. This is everybody. And, this rebound in your weight is a sign that you're probably leaving performance gains on the table by making yourself too light in the competitive season. You won't be recovering as well. And one of the concepts I like to bring to the whole nutrition discussion is a concept of having a healthy, strong training weight. And most of the year is focused on just sitting at this comfortable weight, not stressed out, and just rolling great training, because ultimately that's going to be what determines our long-term development. And I think many athletes think that they can, by just getting super light, it's like some sort of shortcut. And, you'll race great maybe for a season, but then you're going to fall apart. You're going to shorten your career. Not worth it. What we're shooting for is a lifelong enjoyment of sport and competition. And we're going to need to be flexible with that. And for the masters athlete, the parent athlete, you're going to need to fit your race aspirations into these windows that you get in your life where, you're able to put together a decent block of training. And if you're consistent at a low level, it's only going to take 2-week blocks if your base fitness is there, really to lift you a bit so you can have a good experience in your race. One of my Kiwi coaches used to tell me is, if it was all about weight, we'd have scales instead of finish lines. You got to do the race. And each of us is going to have an optimal race weight. And, my advice and something I noticed with myself was never lose the last kilo. It was never worth it, because when you think you're just right, you've gone too far and your immune system is on edge and you're not recovering. You're getting night sweats and the whole deal. You need to stay away from that. If you're a high performance athlete, you got to focus on performing.
Now, we love the idea of just going hard for as long as we can, especially if we've had some time out. We think, we can't afford to take any time out. But one thing which Gordo speaks about is the importance, or at least the benefits, of considering an off season.
So I do not do well not exercising. I'm better to be around if I get a little bit of exercise. So it's my friend Justin Dare calls it a low season rather than an off season. So the stress is down. I like to undertake a non-training project, something that I wouldn't normally do in my life. So I have a little project that I work on for a few months. I've written books, started businesses. My current project is a little redevelopment project of a property that I manage. And that keeps me from giving myself too much training, if you know, so it keeps a cap on things. And in the fall, you kind of need that because the weather's still pretty good. Once you're in winter, it's kind of easy to keep a lid on things because the weather's not as good for training.
And last but not least, if you have been out of the sport for a while or you're required to do heavy volume, maybe there's some benefit in looking at alternative ways to get the endurance that you need through a variety of different sports.
And I used cycling with all the runners I coached. And recently, after a 10-year break from running with a lot of calf problems, very similar to you, I tried to come back twice in the 10 years. Both times, lower leg issues. It all just got too hard. I just gave up. And I came back. My first run was July 1st, 2022. And I was able to complete an ultra last month, September 2023. So it was a 70K race, 61K of running and 9K of swimming in it. And I got through that. So I was able to come back. I didn't win it. I wasn't at the front of it. I just got through it. But that was a big win for me. And a whole body approach using the bike to accelerate my aerobic development worked for me. And if someone's looking to step up their distance or their duration, I think there's a key role for the bike to play. Now, this is not just the elite level. This would be everybody. Because if the average time for a marathon, let's say it's about 4 hours, depending on the race, there's no way you can take a recreational runner and send them out for a 3-hour run and have them ready to run again 2 days later. They're just going to be too beat up, too tired. And if you keep doing that over and over again, they're going to get injured. But what you can do is you can say, well, we're going to ride the bike for half an hour and we're going to run for half an hour. And we're going to do that 3 times in a row on your long day. And you're going to get the experience of what it's like to run after 2.5 hours of exercise. And you can use combination workouts, and you can also train the body to function for the race duration. So you can build this long ride up to 4 hours, and you can train the body to actually function and move for the race duration and still recover, because you're going to be biomechanically limited. So when you're working with a master's athlete or a developing athlete, young athlete, or a very fit athlete who's returning to running, who has the capacity to hurt themselves very easily, this bike outlet that you're giving them will prevent them from injury.
Now, guys, as always, if you want access to the full conversation, I've linked it down in the description below. If you want to jump on board, subscribe to Relax Running, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We've got new episodes coming out every week. If you're after some help with either your running technique and efficiency or some personal running coaching, also link that below for you right now. But before you go, let us know what you liked about the information Gordo shared with us today. And in the meantime, if you're looking for a little more food for thought, check out this video.